I'll never forget the way the red and blue lights flooded our quiet little cul-de-sac that night, piercing through the thick Virginia fog like the wrath of justice itself. My porch, usually cluttered with potted herbs and hummingbird feeders, looked like a battlefield cop shouting, radios crackling, and in the center of it all, Karen. Yes, that Karen, president of our HOA, a woman with bleach-blonde hair as brittle as her morals, standing dead center in my living room, caught red-handed with her gloved fingers wrapped around my medical telemetry device like she was James Bond on a mission. Except this wasn't espionage. It was my life. She was screaming something incoherent about national security, accusing me, a 76-year-old deaf grandfather with congestive heart failure and Parkinson's, of being a spy. A spy. Because I had a small, blinking device clipped to my chest transmitting vitals to my doctors through a 24/7 telehealth feed. And guess what? That very feed is what saved me. You see, my nurses had eyes on me the entire time. Live. They watched the moment she kicked down my side door, watched her scream in my face while I struggled to understand, watched her rip the cords out of the wall thinking they were bugging her somehow. And they didn't hesitate. They called 911 the moment she stepped inside. I watched her wrists get cuffed right there in my living room, her mouth still running a mile a minute, ranting about secret surveillance and rogue frequencies. The officers didn't even bother listening to her. One of them gently helped me back into my chair and asked if I was hurt. I couldn't hear him, but I understood everything. Now, let's rewind. Let me tell you how it all began, how this entire nightmare unraveled from the moment I moved into Rosewood Glen, a neighborhood that looked perfect on the outside, until Karen showed her true face. And how I, Henry Dalton, a retired train engineer with hearing aids and 2 artificial hips, became the target of the most deranged HOA president you could ever imagine. Let's go back to the start. Drop your city below. We want to see how far this story has reached. It started slow, like a fog creeping in just before sunrise. My name is Henry Dalton. I'm 76 years old, deaf for the last 2 decades after a workplace accident, and recently diagnosed with Parkinson's. My wife, Marlene, sleeps in the guest room now. Not because we've fallen out of love, no. It's because I twitch too much at night. Sometimes I gasp in my sleep, and she needs her rest, especially now that she's helping me get through my treatments. When my doctor suggested telehealth monitoring, I wasn't thrilled. It meant wearing a chest patch that tracked my heart rate, tremors, blood oxygen, and sent real-time data to a team of nurses. They could even initiate a 2-way video check-in if something seemed off. It felt intrusive at first, but it saved my life more than once. Then came Karen. She was already infamous in Rosewood Glen. People said she once fined a veteran for flying an American flag too high. Another time, she threatened a teenager with legal action because his wheelchair ramp was aesthetic pollution. So when she came to our door last September, clipboard in hand, I knew trouble was brewing. Her first words? "We need to talk about your surveillance setup." I blinked, confused. "You mean my medical monitor?" She narrowed her eyes like I was trying to trick her. "I've seen the blinking. At night. Your blinds aren't closed all the way. That thing is transmitting data." "Who are you transmitting to?" Marlene stepped in, trying to be polite. "It goes to his doctors. It's for health monitoring. We explained that in our application." "Application denied," she snapped, voice shrill. "You didn't get final approval from the HOA board. That device may be recording the entire neighborhood." It would have been laughable if it wasn't terrifying. I was just a sick old man trying to stay alive, and this woman was accusing me of espionage like we were in a Cold War thriller. After that, it got worse. She started sending notices, fines, demands to cease all transmissions. She claimed I was violating electromagnetic ordinances and monitoring private property without consent. I tried to explain again and again. I even showed her the medical paperwork, but she wouldn't hear it. Because she didn't want to hear it. To her, I wasn't a neighbor. I was a threat, a concept, a delusion to conquer. And the more she stared at me, the more I saw at that look, like I was less than, like my disability and age meant I was too feeble to fight back. What she didn't know was that the very thing she feared, the little blinking light, would become the eye that watched her downfall. The camera that never blinked, the feed that never stopped, and the nurses who would become my unexpected guardians when the nightmare reached its peak. But we're not there yet. First, Karen had to go completely off the rails, and it began with the night she followed my grandson to my house, convinced he was smuggling data sticks. Yeah, buckle up, it's about to get darker. It was a chilly Thursday evening in late January. My grandson Jamie, bright kid, 22, studying biomedical engineering, had come by to bring me some homemade soup and help change the adhesive on my telemetry patch. He visits twice a week, always patient, always careful to sign slowly so I can read his hands and his lips. I didn't know it at the time, but Karen had been watching him. She cornered him in the driveway as he was pulling his backpack from the trunk. "Hey, what's in the bag?" she snapped. Jamie looked confused, then polite. "Books. Some tools. I help with my granddad's." "I know what you're doing," she interrupted, eyes wild. "You're delivering equipment, memory drives, transmission extenders. You're all working together, aren't you?" Jamie tried to explain. "It's just medical stuff, he's under remote monitoring." But she wasn't listening. Her eyes were scanning the street, her fingers twitching on the pen clipped to her HOA binder like it was a weapon. She shouted that she would be documenting everything for evidence. Jamie came inside shaken, muttering, "Gramps, she's really losing it. You need to tell someone." I didn't want trouble. I was tired. Most nights my legs felt like concrete, and my hands wouldn't stop trembling. I told myself she'd get bored and move on. But deep down, I knew better. And 2 days later, I saw the truth. At 3:08 a.m., I woke up with my heart racing. Not because of my condition, but because the motion sensor light outside flicked on. Through the haze of my half-sleep, I saw a figure creeping along the side of my house. It was her, Karen. She was in dark clothes, crouched low, flashlight between her teeth, like some deranged operative on a rogue mission. Her bleach-blonde hair was tied back tight, her eyes scanning like a predator, dead set on one goal, infiltration. I fumbled for the emergency button on my bedside tablet. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped it, but I hit it just in time. The system flagged a possible cardiac episode, and within seconds, a nurse named Sarah opened the live camera feed. "Mr. Dalton, are you all right?" she typed on the screen. "You're showing signs of distress." I couldn't speak. I just pointed, hand trembling toward the hallway. My throat tightened. My whole body felt like it was turning to stone. But the camera saw everything. Karen prying open the side door. Karen slipping into the living room, moving in slow, practiced steps, mumbling to herself like she was in some delusional spy thriller. And then her voice low, venomous. "I know what you're doing, old man," she hissed into the darkness. "You think you can hide your little spy lab in here? You think I don't see the blinking? I know a surveillance grid when I see one." She stepped deeper into the room, eyes locking on my telemetry base unit and the softly blinking heart monitor on the table. The same one that kept me alive. The same one that had been streaming this entire invasion to a stunned group of nurses and a tech supervisor watching live from Richmond. Karen didn't hesitate. She marched toward the table and ripped the device out of the charger. Cables flew. The tablet crashed to the ground. She yanked at the monitor cords like they were wires on a bomb. "You think this is over? You think your little medical cover story fools me?" she muttered, now pacing like a rabid animal. "I knew it the moment your grandson came with that backpack. You've got transmitters, relays, drones. Don't play dumb." She turned on her heel and lunged toward the backup monitor mounted high on the wall. I had installed it after my last hospital scare just in case I collapsed and couldn't reach the tablet. She saw it, and she lost it. Karen climbed onto my antique end table, knocking down family photos and heirloom books as she reached for the mounted device. Her foot slipped, sending her crashing into the floor. But she didn't stop. She scrambled on hands and knees, grabbing my oxygen reader, hurling it across the room. I tried to stand, but my legs failed me. I collapsed back into my chair, heart hammering. I couldn't even scream, I could only watch. Then she turned her fury toward me. She staggered up, eyes wild, hair in her face. "You've been spying on me," she growled, stomping toward me. "You reported me. You and your little nurse army." She reached out, grabbed the telemetry patch on my chest, and tried to rip it off. I gasped. The adhesive tore at my skin. Alarms blared. The base unit blinked wildly from the floor. That's when the door exploded open. Officers swarmed in like a flood, voices loud and sharp. "Get on the ground! Let him go! Don't move!" Karen spun to face them, mouth curled in rage. "You're too late," she shouted, arms flailing. "He's compromised the whole neighborhood. This man is a threat to national security. I demand—" They tackled her mid-rant, forcing her down as she kicked and clawed. My chest burned, my head swam, but I saw it clear as day, the red dot still blinking on the backup camera, still recording. Sarah's voice came through the tablet speaker, shaken but firm. "Emergency services are on scene. Hang in there, Mr. Dalton, we've got you." And as the officers dragged Karen out screaming that she was the law, that she was the HOA, that this was all some deep state trap, I let out the first full breath I'd taken in what felt like forever. Justice hadn't just arrived. It had watched everything. And the reckoning had only just begun. The door slammed behind them, and for the first time in what felt like hours, there was silence. No more cables being ripped from walls. No more paranoid screaming about satellites and surveillance. Just the low hum of my medical monitor blinking like a heartbeat in the wreckage she'd left behind. I sat slumped in my recliner, the telemetry patch hanging half-detached from my chest, my body trembling not from Parkinson's, not entirely but from the adrenaline crash. My wife, Marlene, ran to me in tears, her arms wrapping around me like she was afraid I might slip away. I could barely lift mine, but I patted her back once, slow and steady. "It's over," I mouthed, not that I needed to. She could feel it too. But we both knew the truth, it wasn't really over. Not yet. Paramedics rushed in seconds later. They reattached my monitor, cleaned the shallow wounds where Karen had torn the skin, checked my vitals, and gave me oxygen. One of the younger officers crouched beside me, eyes soft, voice calm. "She's going to jail, Mr. Dalton. We're not letting this slide." I gave him a look, one he understood, a look that said, "I've seen too much to believe in promises." But he stayed there, holding my gaze. "I saw the footage. The whole thing. You were brave. She crossed every line imaginable." And then, something strange happened. I saw Karen again this time, through the living room window. She was being shoved into the back of a cruiser, head down, screaming still, but her voice muffled behind the glass. Her hair was wild now, her blouse torn at the shoulder. But it wasn't her chaos that struck might, was her eyes. They weren't filled with guilt. They were filled with entitlement. Even now, even cuffed and exposed, she still looked like she believed this was her neighborhood, her war, her house. That chilled me more than anything else. Sarah's voice crackled through the tablet again, steady as ever. "Mr. Dalton, we're transferring the footage to law enforcement and securing a backup off-site. You're protected." Protected. I stared at the broken lamp, the overturned table, the gouge in the floor where she'd slipped. Protected? I had been hunted in my own home by a woman obsessed with control, a woman who saw my disability as a weakness, my medical condition as a cover, and my age as an excuse to treat me like I was disposable. But that night, in the silence after the storm, something shifted inside me. I realized I wasn't just a victim. I was evidence. I was the line she crossed. And I wasn't done yet. The officers would handle the arrest, the lawyers would handle the charges, but the truth, that was mine to tell. And the world was about to hear it. The next morning, the media showed up. By 7:00 a.m., the neighborhood was unrecognizable. A white van from Channel 5 News parked across the street. Then came Channel 9. Then the local affiliate from Richmond. They set up cameras, angled just right to catch the yellow police tape still fluttering across my porch. And for the first time since we moved into Rosewood Glen, people weren't crossing the street to avoid our house. They were stopping, watching, recording. Karen's face was already plastered all over local news segments. HOA president accused of breaking into elderly man's home. The anchor's voice was incredulous as she read the highlights. Disabled, 76-year-old retired engineer, cardiac monitor, caught live on telehealth stream. The public loved the footage. It was raw, shocking, unfiltered. But it wasn't just about the break-in. It was about who she targeted. The media latched onto it, a paranoid HOA tyrant attacking a vulnerable senior under medical care. Every headline made her look worse. Every replay of her yelling, "I am the hoe," made the story more surreal. Internet forums called her Commander Karen. Others dubbed her the HOA warlord. And then came the real avalanche, the legal machine. Within 48 hours, I was contacted by a federal disability rights attorney out of D.C. He had seen the clip circulating online and immediately offered pro bono representation. His firm had spent years taking down corporate offenders who violated ADA laws. "Mr. Dalton," he said during our video consult, "what happened to you is not just criminal trespass, it's a civil rights violation." Karen was charged that same day with burglary of an occupied dwelling, assault and battery of a disabled person, destruction of protected medical equipment, stalking and harassment, resisting arrest, and most damning of all, violations under the Americans with Disabilities Act. She was denied bail. Apparently, when they searched her house, they found a binder full of notes about me, printouts of satellite images, scribbled theories, diagrams of radio transmission flow supposedly traced from my window. She'd been spiraling for months. Meanwhile, my legal team began preparing a civil case. We were suing the HOA and Karen personally. The HOA for enabling her reign of terror with unchecked authority, and Karen for targeting, harassing, and physically assaulting me inside my own home. And here's the poetic twist: the very telehealth service she feared so much. They became key witnesses. The nurses, the logs, the feed, the audio, they all became the backbone of the prosecution. You know what the prosecutor said during the first pretrial hearing? "This is one of the clearest, most disturbing cases of delusional abuse of power I've seen in 30 years. Karen's lawyer tried to claim mental instability, said she was stressed, paranoid, overworked. But none of it mattered. Because the video didn't lie. Because I didn't lie. And because the world had already made up its mind. But we weren't at the end yet. There was still one more twist coming, one final revelation that turned Karen's story from outrageous to utterly horrifying. And it started when we uncovered what else she had been doing in the name of neighborhood safety. You'd think a deranged HOA president breaking into a disabled man's home would be the peak of the madness. But it wasn't. Not even close. While the criminal case was being prepared, my attorney filed a subpoena for Karen's HOA communications. We wanted to show a pattern of harassment not just toward me, but toward anyone who didn't fit her mold of acceptable residence. What we got back was a manifesto. Over 400 emails. Karen had written endless incident reports about me, each more paranoid than the last. She logged how long my blinds stayed open. She marked the exact time my telemetry monitor blinked. She accused my wife of silent signaling, my grandson of transporting encrypted media, and even claimed my hummingbird feeder was a frequency amplifier. She wasn't just targeting me. She'd filed complaints against a veteran with a PTSD service dog, weaponized animal, a single mother with a wheelchair ramp, illegal construction, an immigrant family who grilled outside every Friday, suspicious communal gatherings. She was trying to purge the neighborhood. This wasn't about rules or bylaws. It was a crusade. That evidence obliterated any defense her attorney could muster. Karen was declared mentally competent, but consumed by an obsessive and discriminatory ideology. The judge issued a blistering statement during sentencing. "This court does not tolerate bullies hiding behind bureaucracy, nor those who prey on the vulnerable while pretending to protect their community." Karen Caldwell was sentenced to 3 years in state prison for felony, burglary, and assault, with additional probation, a permanent restraining order, and a federal lifetime ban from any HOA leadership or decision-making role. And then came the civil trial. The jury awarded us $250. Zero in damages enough to rebuild, replace my equipment, pay my grandson's student debt, and fund a local nonprofit for disabled veterans. But money wasn't the real win. The real victory came the day I stepped outside months later, cane in one hand, telemetry patch secure, and found the entire street lined with neighbors clapping. Old Mr. Ling brought mooncakes. Jamie's college friends hung a homemade banner across my porch. The only surveillance we need is Henry's heart monitor. The local mayor even came by with a commendation. Turns out, truth spreads faster than fear. Karen wanted me gone. She wanted silence. But all she did was give my voice a stage. And here's what I've learned. Being old doesn't mean you're weak. Being disabled doesn't mean you're helpless. And being quiet doesn't mean you're not watching, waiting, ready. Because even the smallest blinking light in the dark can expose the monsters pretending to lead. So if you ever find yourself backed into a corner by someone like Karen, remember this. The strongest resistance isn't always the loudest. Sometimes it's the man in the chair, with the heartbeat monitor, and the camera that never blinks.